It's over for Mack Brown at North Carolina. I don't think there's any other way to put it other than it's over for Mack Brown at North Carolina. If you score 50 points in a game, you should win about 99% of the time. And North Carolina scored 50 on Saturday and got beat handily by James Madison of the Sun Belt. And it wasn't James Madison scored 50 in the first half against North Carolina. And Mack Brown has had a great run. National championship coach at Texas, had a great run at North Carolina before he was at Texas, had a great run at Tulane, had a pretty good run his second go-around in North Carolina, but it's over and it has to be over. If you're a 73-year-old coach, there's already sort of like one eye looking at the door from you and also your fan base, administration, etc. It can be over at any time. And I think it's clear and definitive that it is over for Mack Brown at North Carolina. And there were, there were discussions after the game that he had told the players in the locker room that, you know what, I'm not the guy to lead this program anymore. And then North Carolina didn't let the players talk to the media after the game. Mack Brown was the only one who did so. And then there was a kind of follow-up report of like, that wasn't a resignation from Mack Brown as much as it was a emotional moment at the time that he was frustrated. He wasn't saying he was quitting. If all of those things are true, if you gave up 70 to James Madison, 50 in the first half, you score 50 and lose, you're a 73-year-old head coach who told your players that I'm not the guy to lead your program anymore. If Mack Brown coaches the next game for North Carolina, it is a wasted exercise. It is an exercise in futility. If he's not the future of the program, and I would say it's abundantly clear that he's not the future of the program, I don't know how you just don't say like, hey, you know what, Mack, we're going to let you coach out. No, we're going to let you have an emeritus role in the athletic department. We're going to have you meet with boosters and NIL collective and all of those things. But we're going to give somebody on the staff a chance to finish out the season, see if they're the next person to lead the program, whatever the case may be. I don't know how you move forward. It just, all of those things combined makes it like, okay, appreciate what you've done for the university, appreciate what you've done as a college football coach, but it's time to hit the old dusty trail, pull a Steve Spurrier and give double deuces in the middle of the season and let somebody else do it. Because that's what the situation at this point deserves. I think it's over for Mack Brown. I think it's abundantly clear it's over for Mack Brown. And I don't know how a North Carolina fan could really argue much differently. But he's not the only coach that has some situations this morning, today. Hugh Freeze has a quarterback issue at Auburn. And the one thing that's true with Hugh Freeze is that it's never Hugh Freeze's fault. Hugh Freeze is never the culprit. Hugh Freeze is never the reason why the Auburn Tigers lose or have ever lost a game, or at Liberty or at Ole Miss. It's never Hugh Freeze's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And in his post-game press conference after Auburn lost to Arkansas, who is terrible, dreadful, should be a 4-8 program, and Auburn lost to Arkansas, he basically said, like, well, we got to find a quarterback who's not going to throw it to the other team. Our quarterbacks got outplayed, yada, yada, yada. It was everybody else's fault but Hugh Freeze's. And one of Hugh Freeze's former quarterbacks had apparently had and seen enough, as Bo Wallace, who was his quarterback at Ole Miss when he had Ole Miss humming. Bo Wallace went to Twitter yesterday and said, we're approaching the point that he's thrown so many quarterbacks under the bus that maybe no one wants to play for him. His offense helped me tremendously put up numbers when I blew my shoulder out, But why is it someone else's fault every time there's a loss? But when there's a win, I watch the press conferences just to count how many times the word I is used. Appreciate what he did for me. My son wouldn't be playing for him, though. I got a story I'll keep in my back pocket forever until it's time. Auburn staffers calling my phone incoming. But that dude has never helped me a day in his life. It was always only about getting a win for him so he could collect his extra 100 racks a win. If y'all knew the medical, basically goes on to say, my shoulder was shot. I'd get shot up every time to get on the field to help Hugh Freeze. But then after he done playing for Hugh Freeze, the relationship's over. He cannot help Hugh Freeze anymore. Therefore, he's dead to Hugh Freeze. And Bo Wallace was complimentary, and that's not the only tweet in the thread from Bo Wallace where he was complimentary. He said, I think he's one of the best play callers in America, but he uses his players. And it's not necessarily a great look when you are in recruiting battles in the heart of the South with Alabama and LSU and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and Tennessee and Georgia and Florida, that the head coach at Auburn, one of the most high-profile players to ever play for him, says, I wouldn't let my own son play for that man. It's not a great look, coupled with the fact that every single time you lose, it's not your fault. Not Hugh Freeze's fault. Hugh Freeze not the reason Auburn lost, if you ask Hugh Freeze. There's just some, like, in leadership, right? Sometimes, like, the buck has to stop somewhere, and generally it's supposed to stop at the top. Like Jake Dickert at Washington State, they get pushed to the limit by San Jose State Friday night into however many overtimes at 3:00 in the morning on the East time zone. And after the game says, like, those players bailed me out. I got out-coached and outclassed by Ken Niumatalolo tonight. And our players rose to the occasion to carry me across the finish line. And there are a lot of times that coaches take the blame when they don't necessarily deserve it. But Hugh Freeze never takes the blame, ever. It is always everybody else's fault but him. Every time that their quarterback position stinks, it's Peyton Thorne's fault. It's not Hugh Freeze's fault. It's not the guy who brought in all of the quarterbacks, the guy who recruited, signed off, checked the boxes of, yep, we got our guy. No. It's always somebody else's fault. And at some point, people recognize that it's always somebody else's fault, and they're not willing to look past it any longer. And yet, here we are with Hugh Freeze and an Auburn program that's supposed to be making steps towards rapid improvement. And when you see other programs make that rapid improvement through the transfer portal, etc., whether it's fair or not, the question is, well, why aren't we doing that? And if you don't have an answer other than, well, our quarterbacks stink, well, whose fault is that? And I don't think Hugh Freeze wants to have to answer that question. Tennessee performed pretty well at Norman on Saturday night in a win over the Sooners. Oklahoma's offense, bad. Tennessee's offense did not perform super outstandingly in the win, but they performed good enough. And give Josh Heupel credit. He said all of the right things throughout the week. All the right things. You can't tell me it wasn't personal for him. You're a Heisman Trophy finalist at Oklahoma, the former offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and you got fired. And that firing might have been, and this happens a lot to people in college football and in life, that being fired or being let go, being laid off, whatever, ends up being the best thing that ever happened to you. And it probably is a good thing for Josh Heupel in his career that he got fired as the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, because he got to look at things differently, got to take a step back, reevaluate, and it turned him into an undeniably good college football head coach. But for him all week to pretend as if it wasn't personal, either he is one of the finest people to have ever lived, or he lied all week. Because it'd be so simple and easy for it to be personal. That you devoted your college years, some of the best years of your life, to this university. And as an up-and-coming coach, you're like, I want to take Oklahoma to new heights. I want to be involved in a national championship winning program. And then for your college coach to say, like, yeah, this ain't working out, big guy. We're going to let you go. There has to be some revenge in there. And I don't even know if revenge is, if getting even, if that's the right word. But for Josh Heupel, it had that game, at minimum, he has to admit that it mattered more than most. But he said all the right things. And kudos to him, because sometimes it's not easy to say all the right things, especially in those situations. And yet, he said the right thing over and over and over again. But I think you can just tell that one meant a little bit more than some others. I think Michigan deserves some credit. They threw for 32 yards against USC and won. They beat a team at home that was just on the fringe of the top 10, and they threw for 32 yards. And obviously that means that there are some changes and some improvement that needs to be made in that aspect of the game. But there's also something to be said for when your opponent knows that you can't throw the football and you do it anyway. That deserves a pat on the back. That you can look at that and go, man, all right, like, it's not pretty, but you know what? A win is a win is a win is a win. And Michigan deserves a ton of credit for pulling out that win. You have to go on a game-winning drive, and you complete a pass, and win against a team just outside the top 10. You deserve some kudos. Now, again, there is plenty of room for improvement on the offensive side of the football. But when you know what you're doing and your opponent knows what you're doing, and you do it anyway, I think you deserve some props. You know what? Let's close today's episode with Utah. How about the Utes? They go on the road, first time in a new conference, in a hostile environment, a game that very well easily could decide the Big 12, with a backup quarterback, and you get a win. Utah, not necessarily real pretty sexy to watch. It's not a hot rod. It's like a Toyota Camry. It's going to get you where you need to go, and it's reliable, but you can't take that thing to the car show and people asking you where a certain type of magnet is on it. They're just good and reliable. Their defense, incredibly good. Their offense, good enough. Good enough. And sometimes good enough is all you need. So Utah now finds themselves in the driver's seat for a conference championship appearance, which means, I think, in year number one, a conference championship appearance more than likely means a college football playoff appearance. And we'll talk about this more, I'm certain, throughout the season. But I have a hard time believing that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be penalizing teams who make their conference championship. So if you are in the top 12 or top 11, I guess, technically, and you are in your conference championship game, you are in the playoff. Because I can't see the College Football Playoff Committee dropping a team who maybe was number 9 and lose to somebody ranked above them in their conference championship game. And be like, sorry, you don't make the playoff. So if you can make the conference championship game, in a lot of cases in 2024, I think you are looking at a college football playoff berth. And Utah now controls their own destiny in making that conference championship berth and making the college football playoff because of what they did at T. Boone Pickens Stadium. It's a hard place to go to and win. It's your first kind of big-time Big 12 opportunity. And they handled and weathered that storm and got a win. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we are pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.